official podcast of the Jacksonville Public Library.
I'm Hurley.
And I'm Jenna.
Today on our show, we have one of my dearest friends. Her name is Jessica Hatch, and she is a literary editor here in Jacksonville. Not the kind of person you meet every day, right, Jenna?
That's right. She has some pretty awesome tips and tricks for those wanting to publish a book this year.
Yes.
But first, what you reading?
You checked it out with your library card. Tell us what you're reading. We're going to do something a little different today. We're going to turn to our customers for their reading recommendations. First up, we have Giovanni, who is reading Payne's Promise by Lynette Lewis.
Ooh.
Yes, she says it's an excellent read. The author bears her soul and shares real-life examples of trials, tribulations, and triumph.
Ooh, all right. So renew that one, huh?
Yeah, that sounds like a good one. She's also reading Becoming by Michelle Obama. Heck,
Claps,
yes.
claps.
So she says this book is such a great revelation and behind the scenes of the life of the most beloved FLOTUS. Very nice.
What was the first book again?
The first book is called Payne's Promise. That's by Lynette Lewis.
Check it out.
Check it out, y'all. Next up, we have a recommendation from Karen Lena. She recommends The Fireman by Joe Hill. And you know who Joe Hill is, right?
I do.
Jenna? Yes.
I do.
Stephen King's son. Yes, King Jr. She just said, loved it.
What?
Yeah,
All
loved
right.
it.
Check
Loved
it
the
out.
book. Yeah.
Check it out.
She's also reading The Outsider by Stephen King. She's listening to it on audiobooks, and she says it's awesome.
There we go.
Yeah, so two good Stephen King and non-Stephen King, but almost Stephen King books.
Basically Stephen King.
Basically Stephen King. So next up, we have a rating from L.L. Palmer, who read Celebrity in Death by J.D. Robb, who is, of course, one of our best-selling authors here at the Jacksonville Public Library, or top circulated, I guess I should say.
Yep.
She says, I like all of J.D. Robb's murder mysteries that I've read. Her main character, New York City police detective Eve Dallas, is a strong, funny woman. She's married to a billionaire named Rourke. The series is set in the future, around 2058 or 2060. Interesting. There are a lot of other nice characters who appear in all of the books and make them interesting to read. In this book, a movie is being made based on one of Eve's solved homicide cases. The actress that plays her partner, Peabody, is murdered at a dinner party, which Eve also attends. A very exciting read.
Nice. All right. That was a great review.
I can get into that.
Preach.
And then one more we have from Calf Constance, the Allie Brown Criminal Profiler series by A. Ryder. She's reading this book in hardcover, and she says it's an interesting fictional read from a local author.
No way.
Love to hear that. Yes, we have lots of local authors circulating in our catalog, so be sure to come to the main library sometime and check out the local author collection on the first floor.
It's pretty sweet. Yeah, you can also check them out online and have them shipped to your library.
You sure
We'll
can.
send them right to you.
Faux free.
Faux free.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, make sure you guys tell us what you're reading. We have the survey on our podcast page at jackspubliclibrary.org/podcast. And maybe we'll shout out your review on the pod.
Would love to. Thanks, listeners. Thanks to everybody who wrote in. So as I said before, we have Jessica Hatch on our show today.
Down the hatch.
Down that hatch. She is a brilliant literary editor, and we got some insider tips from her on trade publishing.
Yeah, she was fab. You know, she started out in New York and interned in New York and then decided to come back to Jacksonville and do her own thing, and she's killing it.
She sure is. Yeah, she's been running her own business, Hatch Editorial Services, since 2016, and she's still killing the game. In fact, she told us that she has a wait list of clients. So line up, people.
That's amazing. And she's also a 3-time Jack's Book Fest vendor. She has been at all 3 of our Jack's Book Fest events. So thank you so much for supporting the library and Jack's Book Fest.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Jessica. So here she is, folks, Jessica Hatch. Jessica, thanks for coming in.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're one of my dearest friends, and I'm just thrilled that you're here. So first, I want to know, how long have you been an avid reader and writer?
Pretty much as soon as I was able to read was when I started being obsessed with books. I have an aunt who is herself an editor, and that was basically like the kid version of getting the hookup, because every time she came to visit at Thanksgiving or Christmas, there was a new book for me, or maybe like 3 new books for me. So I just became obsessed from the very beginning, and then I started tooling around writing stories on my grandpa's computer whenever we'd go over to their house.
What kind of stories?
Oh man, always really like intensely tragic ones, like one where there was an actress in a production of Hound of the Baskervilles, but she gets bitten by the dog. Like,
Oh my God.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
inventive.
it was pretty dark for a 7-year-old, I guess. But
You're exercising that though. That's
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
they always had twist endings too. It was like, or are they gone? You know.
stay tuned to find out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the best.
that kind of ending. I love it. So, what was your path to becoming a literary editor? It sounds like your aunt kind of put the wheels in motion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, my aunt worked in New York book publishing, and the summer that I turned 16, she said, would you like to come up and job shadow my assistant at Hyperion? And I said,
Wow.
that would be amazing. So for a month, I worked with my aunt out of her house during the week, and then once or twice a week, we'd go into the city, and, you know, it was just dazzling doing these small administrative tasks. You know, you're 16 and you're like, yes, I'll file these things. This is amazing. But I was hooked just from sitting in on sales meetings and editorial meetings. So I entered the University of Virginia knowing that I wanted to do book publishing after I graduated. And so I did the 4 years, and then I moved on up to the city, and very quickly found out that it is a very difficult industry to land a job in, especially as an editorial assistant, because you have probably about 50 people with the same level of experience, including like really impressive internships. I interned at Writer's House twice, and then had some temp jobs at other agencies.
So, for our listeners who are unfamiliar, tell us what an editorial assistant does.
Yeah, so an editorial assistant, as it sounds, assists an editor. So they're doing a lot of the groundwork and the grunt work. So as you can imagine, both agents and editors get a whole lot of manuscripts sent to them on a regular basis. On the part of an editor, you're going to have agents sending you things all the time. So your assistant sort of acts as your first line of gatekeeping and really skims these things, writes readers' reports, which are 1 or 2 page documents that sort of go through the synopsis of a work, talk about the pros and cons of it, its marketability, its saleability, so that the editor has a better sense of what they're diving into. And then, of course, they're doing all of the minutia of like, okay, well, on this book's production timeline, we need to have the proofs to the art department by this day. So just really coordinating an editor's schedule and making sure things
So they're kind of
go
like
well.
a project manager in that sense.
In a sense, when you're an assistant, it really depends where. If you're in a boutique sort of situation, like an agency, where you're an agent's assistant, you're probably going to wear a lot of hats. If you're at a big 5 publisher, maybe you're at an imprint of Penguin Random House, you're going to have more of a defined role because it's a very corporate sort of element. But yeah, they're sort of like little assistant project manager people. It really also depends on the individual editor and their management style and how they like to perceive their assistant.
Interesting. And so you were in New York, you're
Yeah.
struggling to find a job.
Yeah, so I was struggling to find a job. I temped and did all of these readers' reports and manuscript edits on the side while I was answering telephones at Goldman Sachs in the evenings.
Weird.
And like job applying every single day. I finally landed a position in the publicity department at St. Martin's Press, which is an imprint of Macmillan. And that was really cool. That was formative for me because I went from these internships and temp positions in agenting, which is what my original dream was, which is, you know, the A of publishing, the very beginning. And then I went to publicity, which is like the Z, you know. So I had this experience of seeing what attracts book professionals to a manuscript and then how they try to hook readers to be interested in
Right.
pre-ordering and everything. So to try to make a long story short, New York for financial reasons didn't work out. That's a conversation we can have if you guys are interested. But I moved down here because I had family down here, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to start over. I'm going to, at one point I thought I was going to go to med school. But in the meantime, while I'm going to a 9 to 5, I'm editing manuscripts for friends. I'm doing it for pay, and staying up till 3 a.m. and then getting up and going to my regular job. And I thought, if I'm doing this for free, and if I'm doing this at all hours of the night, I love it. I need to find some way to make this a career. So I started saving up money, and I went out on my own, took Hatch Editorial Services full-time in October of 2016. And I haven't really looked back. I haven't had time to look back.
True, right. And you've just grown and grown as an editor ever since that time.
Yeah,
it's been amazing
really
to watch. Yeah, so cool. Yeah, when I met you, your business was still pretty new, but I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this girl has it all together. It's amazing. But it's so cool to see.
She's too nice to me.
So what does an average work week look like for you?
Everyone is different, which is exciting. That's part of the fun part. I'm sure you guys can agree as podcast hosts. But it does have that average structure. So I get up and I start working on client projects. Usually if I have a book publicity client, I'll work in the morning so that I'm one of the first things that a reporter might see in their inbox. I check a few emails, and then in the late morning and early afternoon, I read manuscripts. I might be line editing for one. I might be doing a total manuscript critique, which is developmental and structural editing, on another one. And then in the afternoons, I'll work on writer-facing things like my newsletter, which is called the Weekly Status Memo. And then on Fridays, I have a little bit more fun. In the afternoons, I do a Facebook Live little mini lecture around 3 p.m. That just sort of helps people understand an element of book publishing or an editing tip they hadn't known before. And Fridays are also the days that I send my clients their status memos so that they know where I am in their projects.
And what do you usually include in one of those status memos for your clients?
Oh, just it comes from this feeling that if I were a writer and I were sending off my manuscript and I wasn't going to get feedback for 4 weeks, I'd be a little panicky if I weren't getting updates on it. So I let them know where I am in the process. I ask any questions I have at that juncture. And then depending on what they're interested in, I might include an educational resource for them about maybe querying agents or best practices for marketing a self-published title.
Wow. And so how many clients can you have at a time? Because it seems like a lot to do. So
yeah,
like, how do you kind of like cut that off? Like, look, in order to do this well, I can only have this many. Like, do you have that number yet?
I do. I very early on, I realized, okay, I need to cap it because otherwise I'm going to go insane.
Right.
And I'm never going to get any sleep. So I try to cap it at 6 at a time. Sometimes it will squeak over that. It's nice though, because it's almost like graduating a class of writers at the same time. I'm working on the same projects, and then okay, now turn over and do these 4,
Right.
So yeah, that's how I try to keep it like that, and that just pushes my schedule out as the year goes on.
Yeah. So you have like a waiting list, like these books are next, or like these.
I do.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome that you're doing so well. That's great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So for listeners who are unfamiliar with the publishing process, I know that can be a bit of a mystery. Tell us what the process is like for authors who send out manuscripts in order to be considered for publication versus authors who decide to take the self-publishing route.
Yeah. So these are 2 horses of very different colors, and they each have their pros and their cons. So the trade publishing route is, let me think about how to express this. The trade publishing route takes a whole lot of hope and a whole lot of determination and a lot of confidence in yourself. Essentially, what you're going to do is, once you've worked on your manuscript, maybe you've worked with a critique partner like Hurley and I do in our spare time, maybe if you've worked with a freelance editor like myself and you feel that your manuscript is as clean and polished and punchy and ready for an agent's eyes as possible, the first thing you're going to do is query an agent and try to get them to represent you. Essentially, a literary agent is in your corner of the ring. Obviously, you want to have an editor who's got your best interests in mind, but you have to understand the difference between an agent and an editor is that An agent is paid on commission based on book sales, and an editor is paid a salary by the publisher. So at the end of the day, if you think about it in monetary terms, an editor is going to have the publisher's interest in mind, and the agent is going to have your interest in mind, because when you do well, the agent does well. So you reach out to the agent. A lot of times you're going to get form rejections. You're going to get, oh, let me see your first 50 pages, or hey, send me the full manuscript, and some very polite, personalized rejections. A lot of people, the rule of thumb is to query no fewer than 80 to 100 agents before you say, let me put this away for a while.
Jeez.
Yeah,
I didn't even know there was that many out there. Is this like
so
national
many.
scale, or are we talking like local?
Oh, no, this is national.
Okay.
I would recommend to your listeners that if they start the querying process, please reach out to agents that are based in New York, Boston, and Los Angeles before they reach out anywhere else. That's where publishing lives, even
Right.
today in this more global economy. And also a rule of thumb, do not operate with an agent who asks for money up front. You should not be paying an agent to represent you. If they ask that, that is a red flag that they're not a professional.
Yeah.
Man, that's good to know.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah. So essentially, trade publishing is going to be a longer process unless you have a book that needs to be fast tracked. Like if there were an anniversary of this past year when World War I, the centennial of the end of World War I, they might have fast tracked books that were being pitched in 2016. But once you get an agent and once the book is sold to an editor, that can be a 12 to 18 month process. So really you're approaching trade publishing if it's something that is of interest to you. You want to see your name on a book cover in Barnes & Noble. You want a full team taking care of you. And then self-publishing, I think, is more, you're going to have to put a lot of elbow grease in. You're going to have to learn how to market, how to hand sell, as well as how to manage through Amazon KDP, which stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. You're going to have to understand distribution and consignment sales. It's a whole lot. And there are professionals like myself and publicists, marketers, all these people who can help you out. It's just, you have to know that you can make more money as a self-publisher up front, but you're also going to have to put in a lot of the work on your own. And one last thing I guess I should say is a lot of people don't understand how you get paid when a book is acquired. When you first sign an agency agreement, you're not going to be paid because obviously they have not sold your book to a publishing house yet. When you do get paid is when an editor acquires it. You're usually paid in advance based on how well they think the book is going to sell. And usually, this was actually on an episode of a show that I really enjoy, Jane the Virgin. Spoiler alert, she ends up selling a book. And she's excited because she's getting this advance for $50,000. And she's like, oh, I can take this year off from my job as a waitress. I can work on my second book. And what she doesn't realize, and what you should realize, dear listeners, is that you usually get paid that advance in 3 installments. So usually upon acquisition of the book, about halfway through the production process, and then on the day that it's sold. That's not the end all and be all of what you can get money-wise. You've probably heard the term royalties. So basically what you need to do now is book sales have to earn out your advance. And so as that thermometer ticks up, eventually you net zero and you start getting royalties based on sales after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to earn as much as your advance and then over that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What happens if you don't earn as much as your advance?
You're probably going to have a harder time selling a second book.
Right.
You may have a difficult conversation with your agent. You may get a new agent, or they may say, I'm not sure I can represent this second book based on previous sales. So it's really complicated, and that's why I encourage writers to really make sure that they believe in their project, make sure that they've worked with multiple people on their project, and that it's the best thing that they can send out, because you never know how it's going to do. That's the tough part.
Oh, you can only debut once.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's the pressure.
Yeah.
This is why so many writers are anxious basket cases.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So what are some of the most common misconceptions people have about your work as an editor?
Oh my gosh. It's like that meme, what my mom thinks I do. And I wish I had a quippy answer for that. I think one of the main misconceptions might be that I'm going to give you back a polished version of your manuscript that's ready to go off to agents. Usually when you get my feedback, you're going to have homework that you have to do. Sometimes it's going to be very difficult, time-consuming homework. So that's probably the biggest misconception. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I try to make things pretty clear and cut and dry. I have had people think around town that I'm a publisher, and I'm not a publisher. I'm a freelance editor. So I'm sort of like, I describe it as like being a consultant.
Right.
That's probably the best way to think of what I do.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
So when a book's finished, you don't publish it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You just let it get ready to publish. Okay.
Yes.
What's your favorite type of book to edit?
Oh my God. I really enjoy working with historical fiction, with narrative nonfiction. But I think regardless of genre, I'm happiest when it is one of those books that I can believe in. I had a client 2 summers ago who wrote this like swashbuckling action adventure historical novel called The Rose and the Crane, which is this sort of speculative historical fiction. A little princeling, like he's a Welsh princeling, has been excommunicated. Basically, this is during the War of the Roses cycle because his family is supporting the wrong side. So he gets kicked out of Wales and starts sailing around the world with this group of Venetian pirates, basically. And they wind up in what they call China adjacent, because we didn't know Japan existed then. Becomes friends with a samurai, and basically they like fight some of the biggest battles of the War of the Roses together. If you've ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail or Gallivant, it was like that. It was that sort of quippy, just like very self-deprecating, dry humor, and it was so much fun to work on that. So things like that just, I'm like, yes, I've got to open this document and work on this today.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. Anything that leaves you looking forward to the work the next day, I guess. Yeah. So what are some of the most common mistakes you see writers making in their manuscripts?
Wow. Actually, I'm glad you asked that. I have 2 webinars coming up in March on the 18th and the 19th called The Top Editorial Mistakes That I See. I'm doing one for fiction writers and one for nonfiction writers, because I've been freelancing for 6 years now in some form or another, and I've been part of this industry for 8 years. So I'm trying to think of ones that I can share with you right now. I think the main one, and it's probably one your listeners have heard time and time again, is show, don't tell. The reason for that, like there is a reason that everyone harps on that, and it's because if you're just telling, then the reader has to fall back on their assumptions and their beliefs in stereotypes and previous experience. Whereas if you're showing them the specific circumstances under which something happens, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, you're going to have them better able to invest their interest in what's happening, and also that phrase, suspend their disbelief. If you really show them how something works and how another character is perceiving it or something, that can become the conduit through which the reader goes, okay, flying car, no problem. Or, okay, this woman is cheating on her husband, no problem. You know, I get it.
Right. So, yeah. It kind of puts the writer in control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great way of putting it.
Thank you. High five. So what does it take to get on the bestseller list nowadays?
It's a trick question. You know it. So
sorry.
So this is a question I have actually been asked by a prospective client before, and I liken it to when I was 3 years old and I went to New York, saw Beauty and the Beast on Broadway, and I came home and asked my dance teacher how many more lessons before I could be on Broadway. In short, there's a lot of work to do before you get there. And there's a great book that probably is here in the Jacksonville Public Library system called The Bestseller Code. And there were 2 authors that analyzed books that had been on this list, created an algorithm, and just tried to find commonalities. But really, there are so many different facets of work that go into the bestseller list, from positioning and sales and making sure that Barnes & Noble puts it on end caps and making sure that you get enough pre-publication publicity. Try saying that 3 times fast while on a podcast. There's just so much going into it that if that's the way that I always answer the question is, there are so many different variables, but at the same time, if that's the reason you're writing a book, you really need to examine your intentions.
Right.
Are you doing this for the right reasons? People think they can write to trends. in the 2010s, they might have said, ooh, you know, vampires are hot right now. By the time you finish writing that novel and send it off to an agent, it's like been there, done that. You cannot write what you love. And I think the rest will follow.
Right. Trust that the trend will come. Yeah, that's hard to do.
Yeah. What if you make a trend?
Ooh,
You know?
fancy.
You never know.
You never know. It's true. So how does it feel when a client's manuscript gets picked up by an agent and considered for publication?
It's really exciting, and at the same time I feel like I'm vicariously nervous for them.
Oh yeah.
To use that dance metaphor again, that's when I feel like a dance mom, like I'm off stage like, come on.
Yeah, cheering from the side.
Yeah. And it's nerve-wracking, and then I'm also there when they're like, yeah, they requested the full, but this just didn't work out. I'm like, hey, you know what, every agent is going to have a different opinion, but sometimes it's surreal. I had a client that I've worked with multiple times actually win a Lambda Literary Award last June for her mystery novel Huntress. And when she didn't even find out, I think because she lives in the UK and the email came out, you know, in the American evening. So I'm scrolling through my email and a list that I'm on shows the Lambda Literary Award winners. And I scroll through and it's like A.E. Radley Huntress. I was like, this is insane.
Wow. Yeah.
Like for her to be nominated and then to win this huge award, I was over the moon for her.
Bet.
Like
Yeah.
I can't, like, we're months after that and I'm still
Yeah.
jazzed. So
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
a
that
big
makes
deal.
you an editor of award-winning fiction. That's
Indeed.
very
Yes.
cool. It's a very big thing to say. So, do you have any dream clients?
oh my God, this is a tough question. Actually, I really love the idea of lifestyle clients. So, and people who've made it big on the internet. I think that they're some of the most saleable people
Yeah,
when it comes to
interesting.
agenting and passing them on to an agent. So I love Yoga with Adrian, which is a YouTube channel and yoga fitness community. The woman who runs it is just so full of life and so positive, but also like so corny with her jokes and everything. I love her. And I'm like, I would love to work on a book proposal with her.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely. She also has a really cute dog.
Yes, she does. It's like a blue trotter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it's called.
It's very unusual and cute looking.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I think actually that she has a book in the works. So someone already got to her.
Oh,
Um,
dag nabbit.
I don't know. Like, I don't know who my dream clients are other than that. I missed Adrian Mishler though. So.
That's a good point though, that internet people are like perfect.
Because one of the things, even with fiction, but especially with nonfiction, an agent is going to try to see what your author platform is.
Right.
So if you write, you need to create a website and you need to start building up Twitter followers or something so that people see, oh, people will actually care when this book comes out.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And
It's
if
kind of
you
exhausting, but that's the hard truth
right.
these days.
And if you're a YouTuber, like that's gonna sell. If you
Yeah.
have a certain amount of views, that totally makes sense. So, as you've said, you're an avid reader as well. And aside from your clients' manuscripts, I want to know what some of your books, your favorite books were that you've read in the past couple of years.
Oh, okay. So I have to give a shout out to Chelsea Hodson, who actually Hurley and I have both studied under. Her book, Tonight I'm Someone Else, is probably my favorite essay collection that I read last year. I felt like it was doing some really new and exciting things with the genre.
Definitely agree.
Playing
Yes.
around with it, like almost a performance artsy kind of essay. And then let me see. There was this great thriller, psychological thriller that came out from St. Martin's Press in 2018 called Baby Teeth.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's
I'm intrigued already.
yeah,
I'm looking it up.
yeah. You absolutely should.
Yeah.
Basically, if you love things like The Exorcist or that new movie that's coming out, The Prodigy, anything like that, where it's like there's this evil child.
It's too much for me.
Oh, okay. It's really good though.
That
because
sounds
you,
like an awesome
Yeah,
title,
you
though.
get it from both perspectives. The mom who's going through like, my child is not well, and then the child who's like, I'm just misunderstood. So it's kind of cool in that way to get both perspectives.
Oh yeah, interesting. Any other favorites over the past year or so?
I have been so busy lately that I'm unfortunately plotting my way through Becoming by Michelle Obama.
Oh, gotcha,
But like,
yeah.
I'm loving it. If I thought I had a crush on Barack Obama before I read this, I'm just like, Mr. President.
Yeah.
I know. He's
Yeah.
such a babe, because one of the things I was really interested in learning in that book was that Michelle was his supervisor when he
Yeah.
was like an intern at her law firm. And
Oh, yeah.
So
just
funny.
like, what? That's
Yeah.
like fan fiction level.
And the way that he proposes, they kept arguing about getting married, and they went to dinner one last time, and he was like arguing about it with her, and dessert comes out on this silver cloche tray, and she's so ticked off that she doesn't see that instead of chocolate cake, it's a ring box. He was like, I just wanted to argue about it one more time before my argument was invalid. I was like,
Aw,
Oh, that was good.
yeah.
rock.
Smooth.
He knows how to hook him. He sure
Yeah.
does.
So yeah, I've been reading a lot of, I think, nonfiction lately is what that shows. But
Yeah,
I
definitely.
just from the library, I requested Bowl Away by Elizabeth McCracken, and I'm so excited to get started on
yeah.
that soon. So
Awesome.
thank you guys for being so accessible to requests, by the way.
Oh, well, we
yeah.
have nothing to do with it,
Oh,
but
I
you're
mean,
welcome.
thank you to the
The
Great
institution
library,
that
yes.
is the library.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. Where if we don't have something, you request it, and if we don't have it in the right format, request it.
Yeah.
Yep, I do
Yeah.
it all the time.
you
And
guys
I-
are a great resource. So
Well, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So are you. So are you.
Stop
So,
it.
Jessica, we ask this at the end of all of our interviews. We want to know, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I love that.
at one point, I think I wanted to be a botanist.
Interesting.
All I knew was that they dealt with science and flowers and saving the planet, and I loved science, still do.
You love flowers.
I guess. And then I loved Captain Planet. So
Oh, who didn't?
Yeah.
Who among us did not? Did you watch Captain Planet, Jenna?
I've never heard of this.
oh my God. It
Oh
was
my
a
God.
superhero who saved the Earth.
I've never
Yeah,
heard of
and
this.
it had the best theme song.
Yes.
Captain
Sing it.
Planet,
He's a hero, gonna take pollution down to zero.
So good. Yeah, it
gosh.
sounds like a fake show, but it was
How
very
did
real.
I miss this?
I don't know how you missed that.
Man, Earth Day. Like I said, my dad was a forester. We were all up in the environmental stuff.
They were actually doing stuff. We were just watching TV about it.
yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, Jessica, where can our listeners find you on social media?
Oh, awesome. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jessica in Hatch. And you can find me online at www.hatch-books.com.
Very cool. And how can people sign up for this webinar you're giving on March 18th and 19th?
Yeah, so I'll give you guys the URLs for the liner notes of this
Perfect.
episode. But yeah,
Perfect.
if you just go to hatch-books.com, there should be a little pop-up that comes up where you can click one of the buttons to buy registration for the webinar of your choosing.
Awesome.
Or both. It'd be great to have you at
Excellent.
either one.
Yay. We'll definitely link to that on our website, jackspubliclibrary.org/podcast. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on our show today. It's been a
Thanks
pleasure.
so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Make sure you visit Jessica online at hatch-books.com. And while you're there, subscribe to her newsletter. She does this incredible weekly newsletter that is great if you love reading, writing, etc. If you want to learn more about publishing, she shares some of her favorite articles, some book gossip. She's got all the hot goss going on there. And she also links to all of her Facebook Live videos that she talked about during her interview. So make sure you subscribe to that newsletter. You'll see that on her website.
Absolutely. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for her webinar if you want to learn more from her coming up in March.
Yep, that's
Later in
March 18th and 19th.
Yep.
Visit us online, jackspubliclibrary.org/podcast, and please follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jack's Library.
Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review us. Make sure you also go and take our What You're Reading survey or our podcast survey. Let us know what you think and what you want to hear on the podcast. And if you're also wanting more information on how you can self-publish your own book, we have a service here at the library through BiblioBoard called Self-E. So that's self-E. If you go to our website and search that, you can electronically publish your book online for free. And it also shows up in their whole catalog, and they get ranked and people read them. So if you want more information about that, go and check that out on our website.
Yes, please. That's self-E, and that is a wonderful, wonderful resource that we offer for local writers. This podcast was produced by Brian Thomas, aka BT, aka Producer Brian. Goodbye.